and the studies here are mostly on weight gain.
Hmm.
And it's been shown clearly now that a calorie consumed after 6 p.m. is more of a problem than a calorie consumed uh, an hour earlier, like around 4 to 5 p.m. So,
Wow.
dinner 5 to 6 is much better than dinner 7 to 8.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performance Life podcast. Today, I am very excited to have an expert who works at Stanford. He's a professor of biology and human biology at Stanford University. He has a lot of experience with the roles of sleep and circadian rhythms, as well as temperature and how different adjustments in temperature and different kind of tricks that you can use, that I'm sure we'll talk about today, including a very, very cool product that he's involved with, has major effects on outputs for athletes. So we have on the line with us Craig Heller. Thank you so much, Craig, for joining us here today.
My pleasure.
Excellent. Well, yeah, let's start with a brief background about how you got into the interesting work you're doing today.
Sure. The work that I'm going to be talking about today actually came from a bet. I have worked a lot on how the brain regulates body temperature. And all of that work was mostly in animals. And one day, a colleague who's an anesthesiologist uh, sort of challenged my colleague and I and said, "You guys think you know so much about temperature regulation. I bet you can't solve a problem we have in the recovery room." Well, what's that? Well, patients come out of surgery very cold. They're hypothermic. And sometimes it takes the nurses in the recovery room hours to warm them back up so they stop shivering.
Hmm.
And we said, that's a simple problem. No, it's a very hard problem because when you're under anesthesia, you're totally vasodilated. And that means you are losing heat from all surfaces of your body. And your temperature can drop quite low. And therefore, when the anesthesia wears off, you are in a state of hypothermia, and your body tries to compensate for that by sequestering all of your blood in the core. So the blood flow to all the peripheral surfaces of your body goes down. So if you're trying to put heat into the body across the general body surface, it's going to be very difficult. So we got a crazy idea that we would put an arm in a negative pressure environment, a slight vacuum, and we would then put a heating pad around the arm, and that vacuum would pull blood into the arm that would get heated from the heating pad, and then that warm blood would go back into the core of the body and bring up the core. If the blood is not flowing to the periphery, you're only warming the peripheral tissues, not the core of the body, which is what is regulated. Well, the first patient we tried it on, it was less than 10 minutes. They were back up to normal temperature, no shivering.
Wow.
We couldn't believe it. And then, to make a long story short, we discovered that it had nothing to do with the arm at all. It was only the hand. And then we went into the old literature for vascular anatomy, and we found out that the glabrous skin, that's the skin that has no hair follicles or hairless skin. Now, we don't have fur, but we have all of our mammalian relatives that have fur. And they have evolved special body surfaces for losing heat. If you have fur, it's kind of hard to lose heat. Okay? So animals that have fur, they've developed special blood vessels in the pads of the feet, the nose, sometimes the tongue or the ears. And what these blood vessels do is they shunt the arterial blood directly to the veins, bypassing the high resistance capillaries. And therefore, you can get very high volumes of blood in these surfaces. When you shake someone's hand, you know what their thermal status is. So we realized that we were using a natural mammalian adaptation in reverse. We were using it to put heat into the body, and its major function through evolution was getting heat out of the body. So we started working on hyperthermia. In order to do that, we had to have someone that was hot. So our lab assistant was a gym rat. He would work out every day after the lab, and we built him a pull-up bar in the lab, and we had him doing sets of pull-ups to muscle failure just to raise his body temperature. So he was doing 10 sets of pull-ups to muscle failure with 3-minute rests, and at the end of the 10 sets, we would then experiment with pulling that heat out. And one day, for no reason at all, after we pulled the heat out, he went back to the pull-up bar and he did the same number of pull-ups as in his first set. And we said, holy crow, what does that mean? There's no evidence of fatigue. So we realized then that muscle failure is largely due to the rise in temperature of the muscle. There's a fail-safe mechanism that prevents you from damaging your muscles by overexertion, overheating. So then we started cooling him after every other set of pull-ups, and in 6 weeks, he went from doing what was already remarkable, 180 pull-ups in 10 sets, to doing 616.
Whoa. Whoa. Intense in the same amount of sets, 10
Yeah,
sets.
10 sets, 3-minute rests.
Basically tripled his output in how long was that?
It was 6 weeks.
6 weeks. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible.
And he was already a gym rat. So you got to think,
Right.
many of us, myself included, many of us gym rats, we, you get to a certain level and you just plateau. This is really incredible.
That's exactly the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the same time, we were talking to one of our coaches here, and he found out about it. And I told him about all of our work and our findings and so forth. And one night, he saw my assistant in the gym. So he went over to him. He just asked one thing: did it get you off your plateau?
Mm-hmm. And it sure did.
And it sure
Wow.
did. So since then, we've had, experiences with a number of professional athletes as well as collegiate athletes and people who are just concerned about being in shape. And I think the thing that surprised us the most is we had a bunch of students who wanted to do their own experiments. So they did an experiment with push-ups. And after that, I think it was maybe 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks, there were some freshman women who were doing over 800 push-ups.
Wow. Wow. And again, assuming, what was the output compared to what they were originally doing? Was it also like a kind of triple in 10 weeks?
Yeah, it was. I don't remember. Well, the relevant comparison, this was a crossover experiment. So all of them had a certain amount of time with cooling and a certain amount of time without cooling. It was roughly divided into half. And when they were being cooled, their rate of improvement was double that of when they weren't cooled.
And so just to back up for a second for everyone listening, the methodology of cooling them was
Yeah.
it was just in the palms of the hands.
Palms of the hands,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll get into you are one of the founders of CoolMitt, which is a device for cooling the hands for this specific purpose here. Obviously, based on the results you saw, makes a heck of a lot of sense to create an incredible product like that. And so someone could then train, essentially do their normal training, but just in between sets, have their hands in this cooling mitt, cooling it
Yeah,
down,
for a
and
few
see
minutes.
such incredible results. Wow.
Yeah, and I think we realize now why. It's an adaptation, as I said, to prevent muscle damage, because your large dynamic muscles can increase their metabolism by 50, 60 fold. And that means their heat production is going up 50, 60 fold. The only way that heat can get out of the muscle is in the blood. And the blood flow can't go up 50 or 60 fold, especially when the muscle is contracting and squeezing the blood vessels. So you really, even though a workout may not cause a big rise in your overall core temperature, it can cause much greater increases in temperature within the large dynamic muscles. Now, you might ask about endurance because you're not driving the individual muscles so hard. But in endurance activities, you are producing a lot of heat, and that heat is gradually getting redistributed throughout your body. So eventually, your overall body reaches a temperature which is causing muscle fatigue.
Mm.
So with with resistance work, you reach that level in individual muscles very rapidly. But for endurance activities, you reach that temperature after a longer period of time.
Okay. Is it still effective then, though? Like, would it make sense for someone to run a marathon with CoolMitts on their hand?
Well, no, not now because they're too klutzy. We a next step will be developing wearable uh, devices that could be used during marathons. But
Mm.
certainly for shorter races, yes, sprints doesn't make. If you do repeated sprints, it has a huge effect. And our athletes here sort of like it because at the beginning of their, or at the end of, I don't know when, at the beginning of their season, it depends on the activity. They have to show that they are in shape. And one of the things they do is they do repeated sprints. Uh,
Mm.
and there's a time limit to that. But
Mm. So this is at Stanford then. The track athletes at Stanford then now in between sprints will use CoolMitt to see better results.
and other activity, other teams as well. I don't know which ones, but they all have to pass a basic fitness test before their season starts or before their practices start.
Hmm. This is incredible. I mean, I can't believe these results are almost pretty much better than steroids. Almost,
They
you
are
know.
much, they are much better than steroids. Much better. And there's data to show that. You can go into the literature and you can find a number of studies that have tested the effect of steroids on some particular activity. And the one that we found, which was most believable, were studies on bench press.
Hmm.
And if you take all of those studies that were different durations of time, and you plot them all together, you come up with the number 1%. 1% per week is what they get in improvement. And
Hmm.
you just calculated the improvement that we were getting with the pull ups. And we actually did bench press studies, and we found that uh, we were quite a bit higher than the steroid. Maybe, I don't know what it was, maybe 10%, maybe per week. So,
Wow.
but it was higher.
Wow. I mean, at some point, these results would have to level. You'd have to hit another plateau at some point, right? You're not going to, after 10 weeks of doing this, would you see another plateau? You must see, because at some point you can't lift all the weight in the world, right?
Well, the issue there is damage.
Yes.
So I have to say, our lab assistant, who was our first or alpha study, uh, he had to stop because of tendon pain,
Mm.
tendonitis beginning. So yeah, it's important to be a little bit conservative in what you try to do. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah,
but
it's just fascinating that I haven't heard about this before. I mean, nobody's talking about this on really any of the health podcasts or any of the information that I've seen out there. You're the only one that I heard of speaking about this.
Well, I guess I haven't done a very good job at spreading the news, but there have been one podcast early on got a lot of attention, and that boosted sales of CoolMitt.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, hopefully this episode here will spread awareness. So let's tell us a little bit about the CoolMit. Then, is it a device? Is it not currently kind of a mobile wearable? It kind of has to be plugged in and staying in one spot. Is that kind of the current limitation of it?
It's portable, but it's not wearable, so
Okay.
you can easily take it to a gym.
Yeah.
So what it is it's like a gallon thermos that you put ice water in, and then there is a cap that includes a circulating pump. So water is then pumped from the cool reservoir through tubes to a pad on the hand.
Mm.
So the water perfused pad, which can then uh, absorb heat from the body through these palmar surfaces. You could also do it with the feet. We have done it for example, with paraplegic athletes. We've administered cooling through the feet, and we have worked with amputees at Walter Reed Hospital. So if you think of having one limb amputated, that's 20% of your heat loss capacity because
Whoa.
you have 2 feet, 2 hands, and the face, glabrous skin. So, and it's additive. If we cool 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, we get increased heat extraction.
Interesting. Wow. Interesting. So let me ask you, what's your opinion on other types of cold immersion therapy? Like cold plunging is all the rage right now. What's your opinion on that, and what's the difference there?
Um, I think the difference there is if you are taking a cold plunge or a cooling at the end of your performance or totally at the end, that's not going to have the same effect as doing it during. Because what the CoolMitt does is it enables you to increase your work volume. And it's the increase in volume that results in the conditioning effects.
Mm.
So if you just post game cool yourself off, it may decrease the inflammation that you would ordinarily experience, but it's not going to increase your work volume because you've finished working.
Right.
And I think, there's a lot of hype about cryotherapy and so forth. And uh, you have to take one thing into consideration. When you have a sudden shocking cooling like that, you get a shot of adrenaline. So if you get a shot of adrenaline, you're going to feel better. You're going to feel energized. You're going to feel different. But it doesn't necessarily contribute to your conditioning.
Yeah. Yeah. I will admit, if I'm feeling half asleep and I have a podcast coming up, I jump in that cold plunge and I get a burst of energy, and my mind does wake up. So it does work for that purpose. That's for sure.
Well, I'm a fan of cooling, but I wouldn't say cold plunges are going to enhance your. I actually have a real distinction. I've been swimming at the North Pole.
Ooh, wow. Yeah, well, what's interesting though, you mentioned cryotherapy. When you go in cryotherapy, you keep your socks, and I think you wear gloves usually too. I haven't done
Yeah,
cryo in
you,
so long.
you can't touch the sides,
Right.
or you will actually instantly freeze tissue.
Hmm.
So you are standing in a cold environment, but you are surrounded with air, of course,
Hmm.
and air has a very low specific heat.
Mm.
So as long as you stand there still, still air around your body is an insulator.
Hmm.
So you don't stand the chance of freezing your tissues.
Yeah, yeah. Now with this, obviously you're increasing your workload, so you would think as well there would be results in terms of the maybe hypertrophy or the way that the body composition as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those young ladies I told you about, they came in one day and they said, Dr. Heller, you cost us a lot of money. Why? We had a formal dance this weekend. We all had to buy new sleeveless dresses.
Uh-huh. There you go. Yeah, yeah, it's really incredible. So right now you kind of have to have this, you have to bring it with you to the gym. So it kind of like a lot of, actually this would be a great product for gyms to have for
Yes.
people to use. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And for
And that is an issue too with more practical applications. For example, field workers, construction workers. So we have a number of customers now that have a CoolMitt stationed in the work environment. One interesting one is along the Mississippi River, there are places where they build ships, and they build these huge, huge steel hulls, which means there are men in the summer down there inside these holes welding,
Wow.
and they overheat rapidly. And normally they'd have to come all the way out of the ship, multiple decks, in order to access a cooling environment. But instead, if they have CoolMitt near their workplace, they can get immediate relief and not have to go all the way out of the ship.
Incredible. Really, really cool stuff. And so, yeah, while we're on it, then it's coolmitt.com is the website, right?
Yeah. CoolMitt.
Coolmitt.com. And I mean, is it a set price right now on what you charge for this?
I actually don't know what the price is, but I think it's down from it was 1,000, and it's down from that now. I don't know how much. I don't deal with the business part there in Orlando, Florida, and I just want to do the research. Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
the problem is the company and the sales are not high enough yet because it's just a small startup company. So the manufacturing is contract manufacturing at low volume.
Hmm.
So once the volume of production, volume of demand, production goes up, then the price comes way down.
Right. Right.
So
Well,
we're at that stage where you should be able to reduce the price dramatically by having lower costs for the individual parts.
yep. Yep. And then I'm really excited when you start developing wearables, right?
Right. Yeah, we're working on that right now, and it's looking pretty promising.
Yeah. Yeah. This is great stuff. You're also an expert in sleep and circadian rhythm.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit some of the most interesting things you've learned when it comes to sleep and circadian rhythm.
Well, first of all, the kinds of activity you're doing uh, are best at certain circadian phases, certain times of the day. So if you want to be really smart and mentally nimble and design new plays and so forth, you're best doing that in the morning.
Hmm.
If you want to do really bulk exercise and uh, you know heavy activity, that's best in the afternoon, uh,
Hmm.
early evening. Um, so there is, even on a normal light dark schedule, there are times that are better, times that are not so good for performance. But then if you upset that schedule by travel, you go across time zones, then you introduce a lot of inefficiencies in your body's metabolism that have bad effects on your performance. And there's some really good studies of this now. For example, um, uh, measurements of professional swimmers or of highly accomplished swimmers that uh, what their timings are for morning practice, what they are for uh, afternoon practice, what they are for competition, for the trials or for the final competition. And there's lots of evidence that jet lag has a very negative effect on your performance, as it has a negative effect on body health. There are lots of complexities in metabolism, cardiovascular performance, and so forth that are affected by jet lag. I was involved this past year in a major effort to call attention to the change in the organization of the athletic conferences. So, the demise of the Pac-12
Hmm.
and the growth of the Big Ten and so forth. And when that announcement came out that USC and UCLA were joining uh, big the Big Ten, it immediately sent up red flags to me. This is so bad for our students. Uh, this repeated jet lag is
Yeah.
really bad for health, bad for performance, bad for academics. And it was given no consideration at all. Now, our athletes, for many of their competitions, have to travel to the East Coast,
Right.
which is crazy, just absolutely crazy. And most of those schools you can't get to with one flight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah,
not
it's
just,
interesting because I think in the past, I always thought home court advantage was mainly because of the crowd and mentally, whatever. But maybe the home court advantage is just that you got to sleep in your own bed on your own time zone with your own circadian rhythm while the other person traveled across multiple time zones.
that's certainly part of it. And there's lots of data to show it.
Mm,
Uh, yeah, there are published papers comparing the percent wins for teams that traveled west versus teams that traveled east
mm.
versus teams that stayed at home. Yeah, yeah.
Well, what about for us average regular people then who do travel? Is there any tricks or tips that we could do if we are traveling from to Europe or something like that?
Well, yes, there are. One of the things you can do is you can sort of pre-adapt.
Hmm.
This is not easy, but if you are really intent on doing it, you can, and that is shift your meals earlier for several days, go to bed earlier several days before your travel from west to east.
Hmm.
And so there are a number of recommendations that circadian physicians, circadian biologists make. Uh, Another thing is your exposure to light.
Yeah.
So that has a big effect on the setting of your clock. So, for example, if you travel from here, West Coast, to Europe, uh, you will arrive in Europe at a time which is quite a few hours different from home time.
Hmm.
So, when you see light, will determine whether the light causes a phase advance or a phase delay of your clock.
Hmm.
So, at home, if you see light in the early morning, that phase advances your clock. If you see light in the late afternoon, early evening, that phase delays your rhythm. So, depending on when you arrive in your new location, uh, you want to limit your exposure to light so that you get the appropriate response. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. That does make sense. I mean, like I've always heard, and that's why every morning I try to go out and get some
Yeah,
sunlight in the
right,
morning just to
right.
give my body the signal, right?
And conversely, you shouldn't be using screens just before you go to bed.
Right.
That's going to phase delay your sleep onset.
Yeah. Yeah. I do use any thoughts on blue light blocking glasses? I use them. I feel they help me a little bit at night.
Yeah, blue light is the wavelength which is most effective for phase shifting. Okay, so full spectrum has lots of blue light,
Hmm.
so it's not fair to compare blue light to whole spectrum unless you take into consideration the intensity. But since blue light is the most effective, you can get a bigger effect with less light. So you don't have to have bright light.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what about in our normal daily lives? Is that something you do as well? In the morning, you try to get sunlight to send your a signal to your body?
Yeah, I pretty much stay with the normal light dark cycle as much as I can.
Me too.
If I get up in the morning and like last week before the time changed,
Yeah.
it was at the point where it was very dark when I would get up in the morning, but I generally don't turn on the lights.
Hmm.
I wait till the sun comes up naturally. So I stumble around a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, I'm even like, even maybe a little more extreme. I don't like to get up when it's dark. I don't know. I feel like I need this little signal. And now again, with the time change, I got that signal that little, as much as I have curtains and shades and try to block out as much as I can, there's still that little bit of light that creeps through there. and that's like my signal to get up. And I
Yep.
like following this rhythm of kind of being awake when the sun's awake. I during the day I try to not turn on any lights, just try to get as much natural sunlight as possible. I don't know if that is something you agree with or not. I see a lot of natural light in your background.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the most serious things about sleep and sleep deprivation is your ability to learn and remember. Um,
Mm,
you acquire new information, obviously, while you're awake. And this is all accounted for in your short-term memory. You know where you put something, where you left off a task, and you have to come back to it an hour later. So that's short-term or working memory. But long-term memory requires consolidation of the information, and that happens during sleep,
mm,
and specifically during non-REM sleep. So if you are in an environment or have a condition that causes sleep fragmentation, frequent interruption of sleep, that has a very negative effect on your cognitive capacity.
yeah,
So a major one is sleep apnea.
right.
So uh, inability to ventilate freely, and your snoring is a symptom of that. So someone with sleep apnea may actually wake up 200 more times a night,
Whoa.
and they don't know it because you don't remember. You have sleep onset involves an amnesia. So if you've just woken up and you go back to sleep, you don't know that you woke up the next morning because you've forgotten that you actually had that brief awakening. But it's enough to disrupt this sleep consolidation process, which requires continuous bouts of sleep, not interrupted bouts of sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you have any advice for someone who maybe has sleep apnea or is struggling to stay asleep at night? Is there any advice there?
Well, sleep apnea, you should see a physician.
Hmm.
Physician, because they will be able to recommend and prescribe um, either CPAP device, or now there are new nerve stimulation devices,
Hmm.
and also just practical life skills, like in most cases, losing weight.
Right.
Uh, because just as fat accumulates in your body tissues in general, it also accumulates in the tissues of your throat and makes it more likely that the airways collapse when you're asleep and lying on your back.
Mm.
So, yeah, there are things you could do in terms of falling asleep at night. The best thing, the healthiest thing is what is now called behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and that is just good sleep hygiene. Have a set time where you go to bed. Don't be irregular. Uh, you know yourself that if you try to go to bed too early, in comparison to what you're used to, it's a lot harder to fall asleep.
Hmm.
So having a routine helps a lot. Not working and engaging in things that get your mind active prior to sleep is good. Uh, Avoiding screens
Hmm.
and bright light in the uh, in the evening before sleep. So there are lots of things you can, and of course your sleeping environment. You shouldn't have all your work type items in your sleeping environment, because that stimulates you to be thinking about what you need to do. So
That's right.
there are a lot of very practical things that are wrapped up in this concept of cognitive behavioral therapy.
Interesting. I didn't know that that was part of cognitive behavioral therapy. I always thought of as like a kind of a therapy, right? Like something that a therapist teaches. I didn't think of it in this context before.
Yeah, they do.
Yep.
Sleep physicians will preferably take the behavioral approaches before they take the pharmacological approaches.
It's actually a great point. Yeah, if people just went to sleep at the same time every night rather than having a scattered or up late at night, and then that could affect their mental health. Yeah, really interesting. You mentioned one thing. There's potentially a nerve stimulation device instead of, because I know a lot of people who have had sleep apnea and they're like, yeah, I got a CPAP, but I just couldn't wear it. It was just such a pain. So what?
Yeah.
Tell us about this other method now.
Well, it's possible to have a stimulating nerve, a stimulating electrode
Mhm.
placed on a nerve that causes constriction of the muscles of your tongue and throat. So it's possible to actually uh, have one of these devices that is sensitive to the decrease in flow and stimulates. So it causes those muscles to contract and open up
Hmm.
the airway or pull the tongue forward. Uh, so yeah, they're gaining popularity.
Interesting.
There's
Do you know what they're
one
called?
well, one of them that I know is called Inspire,
Okay.
uh,
Interesting.
and there's one other one I don't know what its name is that's in development now. I think it's in clinical testing, uh, but yeah,
Interesting.
a sleep physician would be the one to consult with.
And what about any opinion on mouth taping at night for people who are mouth breathers or even sleep apnea? Taping your mouth. I've heard of people saying they got great results from taping the mouth and having the nostril thing that opens your nostril more. Any research you've seen on that, or things that you've seen anecdotally?
Well, yes and no. I can't imagine taping would be a great idea. That seems to me to be pretty old. But there is a product out now, and I don't know the name of it. I know the woman who has invented it, but it's a little mouth guard that doesn't block the mouth, but it prevents inhalation.
Hmm. Nice.
So I forget the name of it now, but it is rather easy to use and much less disturbing than CPAP or taping.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a tape that my wife was using regular mouth tape and she didn't like it. She was like, people get nervous, like, oh, what if I need to, open my mouth and I can't? But there is one called Myotape, which it was created by Patrick McCowan, the guy who wrote the book Oxygen Advantage. Myotape is kind of a circular thing that goes around your lips and just kind of purses them down. But if you need to open and take a sip of water or talk, you can. And those ones have worked really well for my wife.
There is a book that you might look into, written by the same woman who developed this device I just talking about. The book is called Jaws,
Jaws. Yeah, I think I've heard of that. I haven't read it though. Nice.
and its major thesis is that if you look at ancient skulls, you never see misaligned teeth.
Hmm.
That the misalignment of our teeth and our demand for orthodontics now is largely due to our lifestyle. So we keep children on liquid food much longer, so they're not developing the jaw structure, which is broad and enables a freer passage of air. So yeah, I don't remember the name right now. I do remember the name of one of the authors, Paul Ehrlich. He's a colleague of mine. But the woman who is developing these devices and doing the research, I'm blocking on her name right now.
Yeah, no, sounds great. Jaws is a interesting book. I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah.
Any other kind of final tips on sleep or circadian rhythm? Is there anything you've kind of seen, white noise machines or anything else that you've seen kind of work well for people?
Um, I'm not a clinician, so I don't really see all of those kinds of devices or have an opportunity to try them out. Uh, my recommendation is simply maintain a good, healthy sleep uh, behavior, regularity, and uh, eat earlier than rather than later. Avoid work an hour or two before bed. Uh, Things like that. Learn how to relax.
Yeah, yeah, good advice. Yeah. So eating, what do you like to see? 3 hours before bed, at least.
It depends on what time you normally go to bed and what time you normally eat. But generally, for most people, and the studies here are mostly on weight gain.
Hmm.
And it's been shown clearly now that a calorie consumed after 6 p.m. is more of a problem than a calorie consumed uh, an hour earlier, like around 4 to 5 p.m. So,
Wow.
dinner 5 to 6 is much better than dinner 7 to 8.
That I had not heard before. That's very interesting. I mean, I've heard I heard, oh, you don't want to eat within 2 hours of sleep because you'll still be digesting and you won't be able to get into the deep sleep or whatever. But I had not heard that actually a calorie that you take in after 6 p.m. could cause more weight gain than a calorie taken in prior to 5 p.m., something like that.
Because your metabolism changes with
Ah.
in time and with sleep. So you're much more in the absorptive state later in the evening than earlier in the evening.
Very interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, this has been great. So CoolMitt.com, going kind of circling back there.
Hmm.
That's where people can kind of learn more about the device, get the device. Literally, the results are better than steroids, which is just a crazy thing to say. And yeah, I think it's incredible that you created this product. So yeah, thank you. Any closing words, or where can people? We mentioned CoolMitt.com. Anywhere else? Are you on any social media or anywhere people can follow you?
I'm not really a good social media person, but my email is hcheller@stanford.edu. And I guess I'm in LinkedIn, and uh, I don't know what else. There are a number of them that I just don't pay attention to.
Yeah, yeah. And last question, you mentioned that like potentially, and obviously I think anyone has realized this, anyone who's kind of working, is that your brain kind of works better in the morning. But then you mentioned that with circadian rhythm, kind of doing workouts, let's say weight training, could be better in the afternoon. It
Yeah,
seems like in the afternoon though is like you're a little lazier, you're a little brain dead, so it makes sense that you'd want to do your brain heavy work in the morning. But it seems, but what's the logic behind doing the heavy exercise at that time?
I don't know what the logic is.
Uh-huh.
It's just an empirical result. And you could imagine that the energetic state of your muscle is going to be different later in the afternoon. And just frankly, you don't have to be as quick thinking for uh, heavy type activities. So if you're a football lineman, your time for mental agility is probably in the morning, but your ability to push uh, that heavy device on the field is going to be better in the late afternoon. I don't have a physiological explanation. It's just observations that have come out of the circadian studies of performance.
Yeah, interesting. Well, Craig Heller, thank you so much. This has been an incredible, eye-opening episode. From sleep and circadian rhythm to getting better results than steroids without needing to inject anything, just by putting some cold on your hands is pretty incredible. So hopefully people will share this episode and spread the awareness about CoolMitt.com. And thank you so much for all the work you're doing. Yeah.
One of the things that people might say right away is, why not just use a bucket of ice water? And the answer is that's too cold, because
Mm.
you have reflex vasoconstriction. You put your hand in a bucket of ice water, those vessels will close down. And it's the same way with cold jackets, ice vests. Uh, what that can do is tell your brain, oh, there's not a problem. So close down those vessels. So you can have someone who's overheated and they're getting cooling from the ice vest, and their heat loss surfaces are constricted. So
I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm sure there'll be a lot of there'll be some guys out there going to the gym and sticking their hands in ice buckets in between sets, but that will not work quite as well.
tap water would work.
Cold tap water. So, what's the ideal temperature there that you try to cool your cool mitts to?
Well, for athletes, we have them set to about 12 degrees centigrade.
Okay.
Okay, so you could translate that into Fahrenheit, but
Yeah.
uh, about 12 degrees. And then, depending on people's conditions, it would have to be higher. Like we do a lot of work. We did a lot of work. We're not doing it now on multiple sclerosis patients.
Mm.
They are terribly temperature sensitive, and we can only cool them down to about maybe 21, 22 degrees before they vasoconstrict. So it's
Very.
different if you're working with an athlete who's already overheated and vasodilated than if you're uh, working with someone who's a couch potato
Yeah,
and
fascinating
is not
stuff.
challenged by heat.
This is really fascinating stuff. Please continue doing what you're doing and spreading the word here and seeing what other ways that we can use this incredible tool that you've come across. So,
Sure.
um, this has been great. I hope we could do it again sometime. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, it would really mean a lot to me if you would forward this episode along to any friends, family members, anyone that you think that would get value out of it and learn something important. The mission at Peak Performance is to help people prioritize and transform their health. And so if you think someone will get value, please, please, please do forward this episode along to them. Also, if you could please rate and review and subscribe on whatever podcast player you are listening to this on, we would greatly appreciate that as well. It means a lot. And I want to tell you about a couple of new products that we just released. You can get 20% off your first order at buypeakperformance.com. That's BUY peakperformance.com. We just released a brand new grass-fed beef protein isolate. This is my favorite new protein powder because it's great for muscle building and recovering and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't give the stomach discomfort and gas that a lot of people get from different types of proteins like whey protein. Some types of plant proteins can do the same as well. It seems to be really, really easy on the stomach while still giving all the great benefits of muscle building and everything else that you want from taking in adequate protein. So check out our new beef protein isolate. We have it in unflavored, which I actually mix and blend with my morning coffee every morning. We have a vanilla and we have a chocolate. You can buy it on Amazon, but again, you also do get 20% off your first order at buypeakperformance.com, BUY peakperformance.com. We've also recently released organic mushroom coffee. We have these in Keurig compatible K-cup coffee pods. We have organic mushroom coffee with lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps, turkey tail, and chaga mushrooms blended with the high altitude organic coffee that we've been using and that we've been famous for years. So that's been a big hit, that one as well. You can get on our website or Amazon, any of our products. And of course, we're always famous for our organic green superfood powder that has almost 5,000 reviews on Amazon with a very high star rating. We're known as the best tasting USDA certified organic green superfood powder with over 25 plus organic ingredients. Again, we also have the organic red superfood powder. We still, of course, have the organic plant protein for those who do prefer the plant protein, but I'm really excited about this new beef protein isolate and all of our other products. We do have over 100 products, so just check us out if you type in Peak Performance Supplements on Amazon or if you go to buypeakperformance.com. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.